Welcome back to our study on the book of Romans. This is session 114. And what I want to do is take a look at Proverbs chapter 9. I want to pick up on this phrase, increase learning. There's a very similar phrase sitting over in Proverbs. By the way, Proverbs 9, when you hear that, what do you instantly know? That's level 3's exhortations. Look, knowing that little bit of stuff is not just data. That allows you to really pigeonhole stuff in your Bible. So when someone turns over to Proverbs chapter, say, 7 or 8, you automatically know that's the exhortation for a level 2 son. And that tells you what to start looking for. You know, in the old days, you just looked at Proverbs 7 and 8 just blind as a bat going, well, I'll read what it says, you know. And so now you actually have a way to hook that into something. So here we go. Proverbs chapter 9, verse 9. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. Now, this time I want you to notice the preposition is in there. Before it was just increase learning. But don't you get the sense that right here, this exhortation is talking about that initial aspect, that this guy, he is going to get something. I mean, he is going to learn something. And it says that he will increase in learning. And so, I'm just trying to make the point of what I said to you all along. It's not that he won't learn anything, he will. This verse, I think, bears that out. But it's not the only thing that Proverbs has in mind when it talks about that. Now, I do want us to take a minute and look at Proverbs 9. And so look with me here. And by the way, did I miss that? Let me just look back. Maybe I didn't. Let's just take a look here. Proverbs chapter 9, we'll start with verse 1. Wisdom hath builded her house, she hath hewn out her 7 pillars. Do you remember when we read this here a few weeks back? You don't. Okay, thank you. Eric remembers. Just for fun, would you like to talk about those 7 pillars?
Yeah.
Let me just kind of throw this out there. But because this again is level 3 material, I'm reserving the right to come back and put an addendum on this. In fact, what I'm about to tell you, I'm reserving the right to come back and throw away altogether and replace. But there is something very interesting here. I can't wait until I can get to level 3 and really understand this stuff. This is just going to be more fun. But I do want to show you a couple things that I think are just interesting. Look at that verse and you tell me. It says, wisdom hath built her house, she hath hewn out her 7 pillars. When you think of pillars, what do you think of? Post, supports, columns. And those are all, whoever said supports, that's what you all have in mind, isn't it? You have some kind of a physical structure that's supporting everything. And that's true in the Bible. I know you already know this, but instantly in my mind I ran to Samson. And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars upon which the house stood and on which it was borne up. And of the one with his right and the other with his left. And Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. He bowed himself with all his might. And the house fell upon the lords, upon the people that were therein. So the dead which he slew at his death were more than they which he slew in his life. But the point I'm after there is the pillars. They were supporting the whole structure. And when they put him between that and he pushed those things down, the whole structure came down. Well, the Bible, remember now this is a proverb. I could go back to that. Let me just back up to it. Wisdom hath builded a house. So because it's a proverb, you're not supposed to think there's a physical house somewhere. What you're supposed to see is beyond what's obvious here. And what do you think is obvious when you just look at that verse for a moment? I'll give you just a moment. What do you think of when you see that verse? What is it saying? Gloria?
I just think of those 7, there's 7 adopted, simple, young man, wise man, man of understanding, and wise confidence. I just think that as being the backbone of what we're learning.
You're thinking about this?
Right. 1, 2, 3,
Oh, you started with salvation? Okay. Okay. That's not bad.
Creation.
Creation? Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
Well, it seems to me like wisdom that built the house that represents everything that should be.
Okay.
Wisdom brings.
All right. Why include the word 7?
That's God's perfect
7
number.
days.
Okay, God's perfect. Huh?
7 days.
7 days. All right. You're going back to that creation theme. Eric's pushing that creation theme. All right. He's waiting for people to get on board with that. No, that's not a bad idea at all.
There's also the 7 churches.
Okay. Okay. Now you're referencing all these 7s. Okay. Okay. But when you think of a house that's built on 7 pillars, what does that make you think?
It's
Okay. Okay. I got to learn how to phrase questions better because you're answering me according to my question. I'm just not defining what I'm after here.
Real sturdy.
Why 7?
It says 7.
Okay, of course it's because it says 7. Why does it say 7? Why didn't it say 6 or 12?
Our house had a porch.
It has a meaning, we just don't know what it is.
What is wisdom's house?
It wasn't a real big house.
Okay.
The knowledge.
Okay. If wisdom's house is the knowledge, and that knowledge, if a pillar is a support, if that knowledge is supported by 7 pillars, is it too far off track to say that we might be able to at some point identify 7 components of godly wisdom? Huh? If you say so, okay. All right. Now I'm going to take you down a road here, just so you'll see. We saw the 2 pillars here, but I want to show you about us. This is interesting because this word pillar, I kind of ran with that a little bit. Look at 1 Timothy. You understand this is level 3 son stuff, right? Here's what he says. But if I tarry long, that thou mayest know how thou ought to behave thyself in the house of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and ground of the truth. If the pillar is the support, what's the ground? It's the foundation, isn't it? Do you know what we are supposed to be? The foundation and the support structure for what?
The pillars?
The truth. Yeah, what knowledge are we really been made the caretakers of? Huh? Sure. You could call it sonship, you can call it godly edifying, you can call it our edification, and all of those are correct. Can you see how that's saying we've been entrusted with that? We can't, look, if we don't have it, no one else will. And I just wanted to throw that out there. It's not really where I was going. But I want you to, let's go back and let's talk about these 7 pillars. And as I have suggested to you, that these maybe are 7 components to our godly wisdom. Now, consider back in Proverbs 6. Now, we didn't do Proverbs 6. Do you know? Well, we may have done some things back there. But in Proverbs chapter 6, God says there are 7 things that are an abomination to Him. Now, I don't think we went back over there and looked at all that, and I'm not going to give you the verse on it because it's not important, but take my word for it. Sitting in Proverbs 6, God says, actually He says 6 things are this, yea, 7 are an abomination unto Him. So you have 7 abominations. Now just think with me here. And that's in Proverbs 6. In 2 Timothy. Now, if I'm talking about 2 Timothy, you know we're talking about what level in our sonship? Talking about level 3. Again, I'm not going to take a lot of time with this, but in 2 Timothy, in the whole book of 2 Timothy, you wind up getting 7 people mentioned by name that have opposed the doctrine and tried to destroy local assemblies who are teaching Paul's doctrine. And you get 7 names given to you. In chapter 1, you get 2 names. In chapter 2, you get 2 names. In chapter 3, you get 2 names. In chapter 4, you get 1 name. And they're mentioned in those pairs except for the last chapter. And you know, here's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at what they're doing in the dispensation of grace to destroy Paul's message is, to me, very similar to those 7 abominations that are talked about over in Proverbs 6. But that would be in Israel's program, you understand. But they seem to be very parallel. I'm not saying they're exact match. I don't think they can be, because one of them's for Israel and one of them's for us. But knowing that, let me just say that would it make sense that the policy of evil would add 7 things that would destroy sonship in Israel's program, and have 7 things that would destroy sonship in the dispensation of grace? Yes. Now, Gloria was closer to being right than you might have imagined, but not quite.
What'd she say?
Now we're interested in what Gloria said. You know, before when she said it, I saw all y'all going like, "Oh, that's Gloria." Well, you know, okay. She said she took these names on these steps: salvation, adopted, simple, young man, wise man, man of understanding, wise counsels. And I, you know, she's looking, but there's something else you can look at up there. Somebody want to tell me? Now, I want you to keep that verse in mind. In fact, I'm going to back you up. Maybe I can take you forward to that. Yeah, I'm going to leave it right there so you can see verse 1. That's the 7 pillars thing. Somebody want to look? I mean, it's on the board. It's on your sheets. You can anybody, if you were going to have 7 components to godly wisdom, if that was going to translate into the dispensation of grace, you're going to have 7 components of godly wisdom in Israel's program, and 7 components. Wisdom had built her house. She's hewn out her 7 pillars. Anybody want to give me a guess at where you think you find those 7 pillars? So now, you know, Billy said this. She said, "It's the." When I said, "What's the house?" She said, "It's the knowledge." That's right on the money, huh?
It's the parts like the wisdom, justice.
Oh! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And what happens at the end of level 2? You've gotten the education as a son, haven't you?
Yeah.
And if you're going to be a level 3 son, you got to have all of that, don't you? Look at verse 1. Wisdom hath builded her house, she hath hewn out her 7 pillars. What do you see about that verse that tells you this is all from the standpoint of a level 3 son looking back at those 7 things? Because this is where you start your education. Does everybody understand what I'm doing here? This is where you start the education proper. That's where you're going to get attacked. Okay. But this is where you start your education. You've got 7 things. Just go back to the table of contents. You can just reel them off. How do you know? What is it about verse 1 that tells you this is from the standpoint of a level 3 son looking back on those 7 things? Thank you. It's all past tense. She's already hewn out those 7 pillars. Yes? She's not hewing them out. If she did, guess what? You'd be in the midst of that. This is from a very good, Linda. That's very astute. Isn't it nice Linda's back on her game in the second half here? Okay. She's you're in this part here saying, you know, wisdom hath builded her house. She's hewn out those 7 pillars. Now, am I going to be dogmatic and tell you those are, for our dispensation, those are our 7 pillars? It sure looks good to me right now. I'll tell you that. Because there are 7 of them. And they are sitting right there in the curriculum. And Paul's going to follow that very format with us. And I think you'll be able to go by. The only thing you may do differently is after we go through this in Paul's epistles, is you may attach a different name to something. But I think you're still going to wind up with 7 of them. Well, in fact, I know you will. So, anyway, I just thought that was interesting. So when you see now, wisdom hath built her house, she had hewn out her 7 pillars. Before, when you read that, were you like me? You look at that and you go like, well, that's nice. I have no idea what in the world that means. But now you look at it and you go, wow. And here's what I'd kind of like for you to have in your mind. Think about, by the way, how do you know when you've got everything in place for the house that wisdom wants to build? How will you know?
Well, it's done.
Okay, and how will you know it's done?
The roof's on it.
Okay, the roof's on it. I'm laughing with you, Pam. That's great. That's great. I'm not even going to answer that because, I don't know. Because all 7 pillars will be hewn out, right? Right. And so if you're coming along and you're here, you know just from that verse, you don't have it all done yet, right? Right. Okay. All right. I know, oversimplification. Okay. Let's continue to read now in chapter 9 because I want to go a little further. I just thought we'd have a little fun with that 7 pillars thing. And by the way, when you do this 2 Timothy, when you go through that and you read that, what I believe Paul is showing you is the 7 attacks against those 7 things. I think that's what you're going to see over there. Because who's he warning about that? A pastor. He's saying, hey, here's what's coming. You need to know. And boy, he names these folks by name. It's really interesting to see him do that. Okay. Chapter 9, here we go, verse 1. Wisdom hath built her house, she hath hewn out her 7 pillars, she hath killed her beasts, she hath mingled her wine, she hath also furnished her table, she hath sent forth her maidens, she crieth upon the highest places of the city. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, come, eat of my bread, and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish and live. We're talking about functional life here, right? And go in the way of understanding. Give instruction to a wise man, he'll be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. We saw that verse just a moment ago. And now I'm going to skip you down to verse 16, because we don't have time to do the whole chapter. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. And of course, now we've changed women. I should have put another verse in there so you could have seen that. But we've been over this chapter before. I hope that wasn't confusing to you. Everybody understand what I'm just talking about right there? That last one is a change. It's the strange woman, and she's trying to emulate wisdom and give you a counterfeit wisdom there. Okay, so I want to end this up by saying what we're really looking at here is you have wisdom saying, hey, here's all the things I've done, and then you have the policy of evil, the strange woman coming along, and then she's trying to steal you away with that. This, by the way, is a description of what will happen to a level 3 son as the policy of evil tries to keep you from passing on the education to another son.
Will you tell me that again?
The policy of evil in level 3 is not geared to make you quit your sonship. And it is not geared, remember the change happened in level 2? Now that changed to ruin your reputation through an indiscretion. Now in level 3, the policy of evil changes one more time to make you not teach that to a son. In other words, that you don't pass that down. That you don't increase learning. Thank you. That's a good way to say it. That you don't. And what's being, now we're going to see another verse in conjunction with this because the exhortation does more than just this. But what's happening here at the end is there's going to be a deceptive convincing that goes on to try to get us to not do that. That is going to come our way. And it says, look at verse 18, but he knoweth not. This person is totally fooled by the policy of evil at this point. Doesn't realize where this is headed somehow. Now, I have more to say about that. I just kind of want you to have that in your mind, because what we're going to do now is we're going to just really focus on this second thing that I was talking to you about, because we're going to tie in the exhortation with the doctrine here. And the doctrine in your Bible, by the way, the doctrine that runs from right here all the way up to level 2, right here. Where's the start and finish of that doctrine? I'm talking about in our, well, no, let's see. Let me just think. Let's do Proverbs, because that's where we've been. In Proverbs, where does the doctrine start? You already know where the doctrine starts. Where? Proverbs chapter 10, verse 1. And to run through the first 2 levels, where does the doctrine end? Have I ever told you that before? I may not. It runs through chapter 24, and I don't know how many verses are in that. Let me see if I even wrote it down in my notes. Level 1 and 2. Levels 1 and 2, let's just do it like this. Run from the doctrine. The doctrine. The doctrine runs from chapter 10 to chapter 24. Yes?
A question about that, the 17 stolen water speak, so on. If that's about a level 3 person, man of understanding, then if he absolutely doesn't know what's going on, what's going to save that guy? Because he's at the top of the hill.
Well, the curriculum. That's why.
Because you said he didn't know what was going on.
Well, okay. Is it possible to fall victim? Yes. If level 3 is not effectually working in you, you can be victimized by the policy of evil. This would be, I'm going to give you an example of it. I shouldn't have brought it up there. Should have waited just a minute to bring it up, because what I'm about to attach to that is going to clear that up for you. But, okay, because I knew it as soon as I said it. I thought about that and I thought, you know, I did this, I should have waited a minute. What's happening is, you come into level 3, and let's say that you start to go through the curriculum again as a father, and you stop. There is a particular thing that the policy of evil is going to do. See, I hate to give it to you now, but I'll just tell it to you now, and then we'll look at it in a minute, okay? If you go through and you stop that, which is what the policy of evil is after, this deception is actually now going to turn you into the biggest critic and the biggest enemy of someone who is continuing in level 3. They are a particular kind of fool that gets described over there, and Paul's going to tell Timothy, if there's anybody that ever should have been on board, it should have been them, but they got caught in level 3 by going, what's the big deal here, really? I mean, you know, this just seems ridiculous. And they just throw it out there that way, and that opens them up to being receptive to the deception that makes them now take everybody that wants to continue on, and they become the disruptive force in the church. Just think of it. If Satan can take a son that is in the midst of level 3, he's not there yet. He's not a man of understanding. But he's working on that. He's a wise man and he's getting ready to go to that. If you could turn that guy, how much destruction could he do in an assembly? That's really what he's after. And there is that danger. So does that clarify that at all for you? I'm not talking about a guy who has done it all. Once he's done it all, I mean, you know, the only thing you can do then is try to intimidate you through some kind of persecution to not, you know, try to teach someone else. You know, that's about all you can do at that. But there's a very dangerous place in between there where you have the ability to actually be a tool of the adversary and become his most powerful ally within a local assembly. In fact, in the notes I tell you, this is one of the scariest things that I see with regard to the policy of evil. And to me it really is. But we'll do that in just a minute. I actually brought that up a little too soon, and then I got sidetracked on this other deal, so we're going to come back to that. So the doctrine, just so you get it straight in your head, the first two levels of the doctrine runs from Proverbs 10 to Proverbs 24. Everybody with me there? So where is the doctrine going to sit for level 3? Oh, very good. Y'all are great. And why not 30 and 31? Okay, that's set off as prophecy. Very good. Very good. Y'all are doing exactly what I need you to do. All right. So when you get to phase 1, of level 3, what is it the son should expect to happen? What's next for him? He's going to go all the way back through the curriculum again, which means he's going to go back to where? If you're in Proverbs, he's going to go back to where?
Well, doctrine, but he'll go all the way back to 1 to tell him the table of
Probably.
Well, he's going to go all the way back to Proverbs 1 because he doesn't just need to know the doctrine from the Father's standpoint. He has to have the exhortations too. Yes, thank you. You thought through that while you were saying it, so that's good. Is everybody with me on that? In other words, when you get to phase 1 of level 3, you're going to go all the way back, and you're going to actually, let's talk about us. In us, in our epistles, where are we going to go back to?
Romans 1. Actually, 3 through 5. No?
No.
Golly, this is scary.
Don't just think, you know this answer. How far are you going to go back in Romans?
To Romans 8:14.
Yeah, to Romans 8:14.
Yeah, but we got to get them justified and sanctified.
That's not a, no, you're not doing, that's not what's happening here. This is the sonship education. That's right. You're going to go back to the sonship education. And that means for us, we're going to go back to Romans 8:14, and we'll come through to where? Nope. Yes, to Colossians. Because this is the education. Okay, you see? Is anybody questioning this? Audie, you're giving me that look. Are you okay? Are you with me here? All right, everybody? Okay. See, we're going to do Romans 8:14 through Colossians, because that's the curriculum to get you through. See, you'll have come through the curriculum again, but this time you came through as a father, not a son. See, it's the same curriculum. Are you with me? Okay, now, if you understand that, you're going to get these next questions right. So let me just probe your thinking a little bit and make sure that we're thinking about this the right way. Let me find these questions here. Okay, we did that. So, if this is going to be Romans 8:14 to Colossians, and that's what you're covering in phase 1 of level of, what books do you think are going to instruct you in level 3? Let's do it in our epistles. Okay, I hear 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. Anybody disagree with that?
You said level 3, 1 Timothy.
Huh? You're saying through Philemon. Okay.
1 Timothy through Philemon is the second one.
Is the, okay, you're saying that's the second one. But look, if you're going to go, here's what I'm getting at. I'm asking you this way. I know this is a little bit confusing. Just stick with me. As we have gone through the curriculum and you do Romans 8, 14 and 15, Romans 8, 16 to 39, and then of course 9, 10, and 11 are just more of that establishment. And then Romans 12, and you run all the way through the book of Romans, and then you move into Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians. You're thinking that when I start phase 1 of level 3, I should see that review from the standpoint of a father in 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. That's what you're thinking, right? But that's not what you're looking at in 1st and 2nd Thessalonians.
It's teaching you how.
But that's not what 1st and 2nd Thessalonians are doing. In other words, you won't go to 1st and 2nd Thessalonians to say, I'm going to learn the whole curriculum from the standpoint of being a father. Where are you going to go to do that? You're going to go to Romans 8, 14 to Colossians and see all the checkpoints and markers. Look on your chart. You notice how I took 1st and 2nd Thessalonians and shoved them over under phase 2? I know that there's not a real big difference there. Now that's different from the first chart I gave you, because the first chart, I just laid it out generally. Now I'm fine-tuning this, like I told you. Because why? First of all, don't you think it would be hard in two little books like 1st and 2nd Thessalonians to go back and review everything from Romans 8:14 to Colossians? Wouldn't that be tough to do? Secondly, how many of you have been reading in Thessalonians? When we were over there and you did some reading in Thessalonians. If you read in Thessalonians, did you see anything over there that told you about how to go back through the curriculum and find the markers and checkpoints?
Nope.
That's not what's over there. What you're really looking at in Thessalonians is something to do with phase 2 of level 3. Why wouldn't God give you another set of books to take you back through the curriculum? Because it's already there. Are you with me?
Yes.
It's already there. Are those markers over there?
Yes.
Yeah. It's all there. The only thing is, by the time you get to that end, when you go back through, then you will be able to discern those markers and checkpoints. But you've got to go back through to do it. Now, will you be able to do that in a much shorter period of time than the first time? Oh, yeah. Yeah. But that's what's going on there. And the reason I'm bringing it up this way is because I know that when you're just looking at the way the book's laid out, because normally, here's what we did. Level 3, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. So you would expect, well, okay, well then when he hears the curriculum again and he'll increase learning, then that's got to be sitting in 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. But now I'm fine-tuning that for you to tell you that is a big part of level 3, but what you really need to do is kind of shove this all over to where it kind of gets into phase 2 of level 3, because what you're doing here has already been written back here. And that's where you're going to find it. Okay? Okay. Now, I'm going to put 3 statements up on the PowerPoint, and you got to tell me if this is your understanding or not. So here we go. Statement number 1. For us, the body of Christ in this dispensation of grace in which we live, the doctrine of phase 1 of level 3 consists of going back over the sonship curriculum contained in the epistles of the Apostle Paul that comprise all of level 1 and all of level 2, or in other words, as Eric rightly pointed out, Romans 8:14 through Colossians.
Sure.
Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Does anybody look at that and go, there's something about that I don't get? Okay, statement number 2. In doing so, The son who has already become a wise man, remember he's already become a wise man, now he wants to become a man of understanding. So he's going to go back, right? A son who has already become a wise man is going to gain the capacity to take the curriculum and act as a father to another saint or member of the church, the body of Christ. Everybody on board with that? All right, statement number 3. In level 3, the son will go back over the information contained in Romans 8:14 through the end of the book of Colossians, and he's going to hear, as it were, the father's own methodology of learning so he can reproduce the education in his own son. Does anybody look at any part of those 3 statements and say, I don't get that part? Tell me now, and don't worry about what anybody's thinking. We're in this together. Okay.
Let me ask you, first, if First and Second Thessalonians are pushed over to the second level, second phase, third level, where's First Timothy through Philemon?
Same thing. Same thing.
On that second side.
Same thing. Now look, I'm going to tell you same thing, but look. In the pastoral epistles, there's a little bit of bleed over. You're going to find some things in the pastoral epistles where Paul, you're going to see a checkpoint, let's say, sitting somewhere in Romans or in Ephesians, and you're going to come to Paul's epistles, and you're going to see something, and you're going to say, that makes me think of that checkpoint. He's instructing pastors, after all. So with the pastoral epistles, there's a little bit of bleed over. That's why I'm saying you can't be real strict about it. That's another reason I have a real hard time looking in Proverbs 9 and trying to figure out where that division is. You can do that on your own, but even if I knew, I don't know what that would do for me. You know, but you know what I'm saying. So, yes, technically you could shove it over 2, but you're going to find some times that you're going to see that goes back and encompasses some things back there. But it'll be in the middle of something, and all of a sudden it'll just like, okay.
I have a question.
All right, Gloria?
If all of this goes up to the First and Second Thessalonians, but yet we also include Timothy and Philemon,
Tied it, right?
where do those come in?
Well, that's... Well, yeah, all of those, that's what I was just telling Linda. You could assign those over to this second phase, but you're going to find from time to time they'll reference something that helps you do this. As you're going back to observe markers and things. I'm going to give you an illustration of that today. In fact, he's going to show you, in fact, I'm going to use this term, he's going to psychoanalyze a guy's spirit that hears the truth about something and then receives it, and then he's going to psychoanalyze a second guy that hears the truth and rejects it. And what that's doing is it's helping you learn that curriculum from the standpoint of a father. That's a little bit of a bleed over. Does that answer your question? Are you sure? Okay. All right. Because if you still,
It's like additional textbook.
it is. It's kind of like, it is.
Supplement.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Linda?
Kind of like you're playing Monopoly and you get that card, you've gone so far, and then it says go back 3 spaces. It's kind of like a side note that makes you, like when you're in, say, First Timothy or something, and it's like, okay, you're here, but go look at this real quick, and then come back.
Okay, that's right. That's right. I wasn't going to say this because I knew this was going to be a confusing day. It's been more confusing than I thought it was going to be. I actually thought today was going to be fun. I'm not so sure right at this present moment. But do you remember how back here, really, this really isn't just about Romans. What is this really about? Especially this. Especially phase 2 of level 1. That's not just about Romans. What else? 1st, 2nd Corinthians, and Galatians, right? And you know what those are kind of like? Saying the same thing. They're kind of like something that's added on over here to help straighten out any wrong thinking that came out of that. So think about, see, but it's not exactly that, but it's close. Think about the pastoral epistles as being more information about what's going on in phase 2 of level 3. But every once in a while, they jump over there to phase 1 and give you something that really helps you understand what the Father's looking at. And that's a phase 1 issue. Oh, I should never have said this, should I?
Good.
I can straighten it out, though. I can straighten this out. You know what he said? You got yourself into this mess? Okay, you know. All right. Okay. I'm just saying, when you get into Thessalonians, don't think this is what you're about to hear. You're not going to hear the whole curriculum again in 1st and 2nd Thessalonians with all the checkpoints and markers. That's not what you're going to hear. Go back to the table of contents for a moment, and I just want to make sure that we get this straight. A wise man will hear and will increase learning. And you see that in phase 1 on your chart. Phase 2 says, man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. And then you have the verse 6, which is the Proverbs and the dark sayings. I just want to make sure you understand that, make that split right there, because understanding that split correctly has phase 1 going back over the curriculum, but phase 2 is actually something different. Now, let's see. I know you have that down, so I don't have to do that one with you. Let me do this. Let me take you to the doctrine that starts level 3. But before I do, what do you expect to find written starting in Proverbs 25 and running through 29? Knowing what you know now, or being as confused as you are now, what do you expect to find sitting in Proverbs 25 to 29? Knowing that that's the doctrine for a level 3 son. Huh? What's that, Cliff? Okay, instruction for a man of understanding. And what do you expect to find in 25? I mean, what kind of instruction do you expect to find? Okay, I confused you worse than I thought I did.
It would be going back to Proverbs 10 to go back through the curriculum.
Okay, so what do you really expect to find in Proverbs 25? Should you expect to find the whole curriculum laid out in those 4 chapters?
No, they'll tell you the markers and the checkpoints. No, I know.
Okay.
It's going to tell you to go back to Proverbs.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Let's do Proverbs, Israel's program. You've come through chapter 24, and you know that when you get to the end of 24, there's got to be some kind of division or break so that you can go back and go through this whole curriculum again from the standpoint of a father. When you have done that, then you start 25 to 29, which have to be broken off separately somehow. And do you see how these kind of also pigeonhole themselves over to phase 2? I'm just trying to show you what we did with our epistles is also true in their epistles. In other words, I told you, the next books after Colossians is 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, but 1st and 2nd Thessalonians are not taking you back through the curriculum. You just have to go back to the curriculum. 1st and 2nd Thessalonians are actually doing this. And that's what Proverbs 25 to 29 are doing. This.
So basically it's a review and learning it from the Father's perspective.
Well, once you've learned it from the Father's perspective, now you're going to do something with it. And that's where attain unto wise counsels comes in. I can clear this up, I promise you. In the 7 seconds I have left, no.
Mike, it would be kind of like Gloria's saying, like, if you're teaching something and you've gone through the chapter, you've gone through the curriculum, and the next thing that you know, okay, you tell your students, we're going to have a test. Tomorrow's going to be the test. What do you need to do between today and tomorrow? You need to go back.
Go back and review all of that material again.
Review and study, because the next thing that's coming is your test.
Right, okay.
That's kind of like that.
In a similar fashion, right, that's where you're going back and review all that material. So, what, okay.
And you learn the checkpoint.
Then you, right, okay, all right. Now, let me show you what 25:1 is going to reveal to you. These are also the Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied out. Why in the world would you need to stop in the middle of a bunch of Proverbs and say, these are also the Proverbs? You've been doing Proverbs for 14 chapters. Do you see what I'm saying? If you started in chapter 10, you've been in Proverbs this whole book, haven't you? But in 10, you started doctrine. Did they stop anywhere around 11, 12, 13, 18, 21, 23, 24 and say, these are also the... No, they never told you anything. You just went from one proverb to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Suddenly, when you get to 25, instead of just giving you the next proverb, he makes a statement to tell you these proverbs need to be set apart from the ones before them. They're also Solomon's, and he tells you which the men... But the very fact that he would tell you that indicates there's something different about the ones that start in chapter 25 than the ones that came before. Are you with me? In other words, if there was no difference, that verse would be out. You'd have just gotten the next proverb. But because this is now a level 3 issue, that's what you're given to make the division between level 2 and level 3. Do you find that division between level 1 and level 2? No. Why? Because that's all part of the education as a son. Now, when you talk about as a father, he has to mark these proverbs off as different. That's the verse that he chooses to use to be able to do that. No, that's not what he's doing here. What he's about to do in these Proverbs that you're about to read, the central idea now is not going to be just being given a proverb, but it's going to be about having experience. Taking what you know and putting it to work, and that's going to be the main theme. And in your notes, I give you examples of that. In fact, let me just show you one real quickly. If thine enemy be hungry, give him bread to eat. If he be thirsty, give him water to drink. For thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head, and the Lord shall reward thee. By the way, you know that over in the book of Romans, Paul quotes that verse. And that verse is not saying what you've been taught that says. We've been taught, if your enemy is hungry, give him something to eat. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. For thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head. And we interpret that as meaning, because this will tear him up, or this will even the score, or this will be your way of getting back at him. And that's not what that expression is about at all. Not at all. What you think of as someone taking a shovel full of hot coals and putting it on somebody's head. And you're thinking, that's punishment. That's getting even with them. But that is an expression that comes from somewhere that has nothing to do with getting even or punishing somebody. We'll cover it, but the thing I want to show you is that heaping coals of fire on their head is an expression that is used to soften up something that is hard so that whatever the truth they're being faced with is, they'll be receptive to. That's really what that's about. Now, when we get over to the proverb and look at that, I mean, you'll see that. But that expression is It's not about you getting even, it's about making them receive the truth. Because that is a process that was used to take something that was very hard, and you would heat that thing up and make it more pliable, make it more workable. Think of a blacksmith. What does he do to forge that metal? He heats that thing up. Now he can forge that thing into whatever shape he wants. And what's happening, see, I just pulled one verse out. That's very unfair, but I wanted to illustrate how this verse is misunderstood. In the context of this, someone is being given the truth, and they have the opportunity to reject that truth or receive that truth, and they're rejecting it. And so he says, and when he's talking about an enemy, again, we're talking, you're thinking about this again in terms of somebody that's, say, trying to kill you or something like that. That's not what that's about. It's talking about someone as an enemy as they are opposing the truth that you're putting forth. And what you're trying to do is get them to a place where they'll receive the truth. And that's got to be softened up. And the only way that gets done is through heat. And so he's using that expression. This is a bad illustration. If I say about Sandy, if I'm going to be critical of Sandy and I say, be careful, Clifford, dealing with Sandy, because he's crooked as a dog's hind leg. Do I mean that Sandy is really all crooked over and bent? What am I really saying? He can't be trusted. That's what I'm saying. It's a matter of, can you trust him, not how does he physically look. This is one of those expressions that we're taking in a very physical sense of the expression, and the Bible doesn't mean it that way. The Bible is talking about a process that they used to make something that was very hard. What does the Bible say about a person's heart when they reject the truth? They're hard-hearted. What does it say about their neck? They're stiff-necked. Think of all those terms the Bible uses to talk about that. And what this is applying the process to soften up a hard object so that it can be molded. This is nothing more, by the way, in the context, again, you would see it. This is about presenting the truth in a way, doing something that will allow them to perceive the truth. That's all that's about. Okay. I need to end this. And let me just take 1 minute longer and do this. We're not going to get finished with this. Maybe we ought to pick this up next time. In fact, we will. We'll pick it up next time. Because what I want to do is I want to show you these two verses. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him. Now, this is in Proverbs 26, so you know what level son is being talked about here. Yeah, this is a level 3 son. And he's told in verse 4, answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him. And then in verse 5, the very next verse, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. These are two verses that the scholars love to pull out, and they say, look how confusing the Bible is. It makes no sense. Some people use these two verses to say, look, here's a mistake in the Bible. That's not a mistake. In a nutshell, and I'll just end it with this. In a nutshell, in level 3 sonship, we're going to chase this into Paul's epistles so you'll see it with his terminology. Let's say here's Ruby, and she's a level 3. Someone is going to come along and ask her a question, but they're not really after an answer. They're going to do something else. You know what they're trying to do? They're trying to provoke her, trying to get her to blow her cool, lose her temper. And it doesn't matter how she answers them, they're going to take that thing and twist it back around on her and try to just... And you know what? A level 3 son has the ability to know from what comes out of a person's mouth, are they the kind of fool that needs to be answered because they're honestly looking for an answer? Or are they the kind of fool that's not looking for an answer, they're just looking to paint you in a bad light? And a level 3 son has the ability to know that. But it goes even further. Sometimes you'll get a question from someone or a challenge from someone, and you'll be able to discern some honesty of heart in them, and then guess what you do? You give them an answer. But you'll not only know to answer them, you'll know how to answer them in order to draw on that honesty of heart. When Paul talks about this, he talks about those that oppose themselves. There are self-opposers. And they come, and he tells Timothy they're going to be asking you questions. And some of these guys you're not going to answer because all you're going to do is get dragged down in the mud. And some of these guys you're going to answer because there's a possibility they can change their mind.
Isn't that what it means, according to his knowledge?
Yeah.
That you are yourself and you judge from there?
Well, you have. But in level 3, that's really going to get heightened. And when they come, you're going to look what this guy may look at and say, he's just trying to cause trouble. A level 3 son would say, you're right, but there is some honesty of heart in this area, and I know what kind of answer to give him to draw on that honesty of heart. And even though he didn't come with that agenda, I can turn this around. And that's a skill that has to be acquired. And a level 3 son. By the way, let me just illustrate this with Jesus. Do you ever notice that sometimes they came to Jesus and asked him a question, and he didn't answer their question? Instead, he said, "Let me ask you one. And if you answer my question, I'll answer. If you answer my question, I'll answer yours." You remember that? And could they answer his question? No. So guess what? He says, "Neither do I tell you." You know what he did? He did that thing right there. But were there others that came to Jesus and asked him a question and he just answered them? Of course. Is Jesus a level 3 son?
Yes.
Sure he is. He knows by what comes out of their mouth exactly how to deal with them. And instead of and that's the deal. I'm thinking, you know what? If you had first of all, if you had a level 3 son, I don't know if he could be a politician, but if you had a politician that had the wisdom of a level 3 son, he would never get caught up in all of the little games that people play when they do this. When someone asks a question, you ever heard them say this? Someone asks them a question, instead of answering the question, they say, "Well, let's talk about the bigger question." And now all of a sudden, they don't have to answer that question at all. I think it's remarkable. I mean, I don't care where you are on the base. Politically, I don't care where you are. And it's not important where I am. But here's the deal. It's remarkable how skilled people get at not answering a question. If I was in those debates, when it came my turn, I would just look over and go, "Mr. Moderator, I know I'm eating into my 2 minutes here because I'm supposed to answer this question, but can you tell me in one sentence what my opponent's answer was? Because for the life of me, after 2 minutes of listening, I have no clue. All he did was criticize me for something. I never heard him answer the question. So what I'm going to do is use the remainder of my time is to give you my answer and then explain my answer." Nobody can do that anymore. A level 3 son is smart enough, and I'm not pretending to be a level 3 son, but a level 3 son knows not, when he hears something, he knows this is not going anywhere. Or he knows there's a chance this might actually accomplish something if I give him this answer. This is a great place for a level 3 son. Okay, I've gone way over, so we're going to stop. You've got notes on all of this stuff, and I know we need to come back and kind of talk about this other issue. So we're close to being finished with these notes, so I'll come back next week. We'll finish up those last little bit of notes. I'll take you over to 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, and I'll show you what those 2 books are actually doing in phase 2 of level 3, so you'll understand what they're sitting over there for, and then we'll be in Romans 8. Oh,